It's 6:30 here on your Wednesday morning on a live look. Hurricane Milton moving its way closer to the west coast of Florida. This very dangerous major Category 5 hurricane strengthened back to that Cat 5 level yesterday, and it's expected to bring some serious storm surge and high wind to the west coast of our state. Thanks for spending your Wednesday with us, South Florida. I'm Chris Anderson.
And I'm Constance Giles. Milton is expected to make landfall later tonight.
And we are ready for it. Our team of meteorologists on your side, covering all potential impacts expected across the west coast of Florida and what we're going to see here in our backyard in South Florida.
Yeah, let's start things off with Adam Berg with a look at the latest trend.
Okay, and I do want to show you something here. Some relative good news. Look what's happening to the eye. Really falling apart on the last few spins here. So I'm wondering if we're going to show some continued weakening when that 8 a.m. advisory comes out. And just to give you a little update on how that whole thing works, once you have a hurricane or tropical storm watches or warnings posted somewhere, then you get updates every 3 hours. 8 a.m. will not have a new track. The new track forecast will come out at 11 a.m., but we will have a new update on wind speed, forward speed, and that sort of thing. And I wonder if we're going to show some weakening here with this system. You notice how that eye is beginning to close up here and beginning to maybe even see some erosion on the northwestern side of the system here. It is fighting what we call wind shear, some fast-moving winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere. And coming up in about 15 minutes, I'll show you some of that data and why that's at least some relative good news in the whole scheme of things here. But really the bottom line is we do have a major hurricane hitting the west coast of Florida, even if it is slightly weaker. These things can only spin down so fast. Winds right now 160 miles per hour, 157 and above is what makes it a Category 5. The Saffir-Simpson scale, the scale 1 to 5. This is high end, obviously. So here's the track and intensity forecast here for Milton. This is a snapshot of about 2 a.m. Some guidance saying maybe a touch earlier. Doesn't matter. Look, we're talking overnight tonight into Thursday morning is when we will see the worst of the wind and the surge and the rain for this part of the coast here. But it's Tampa Bay and where this location is, by the way, even though this could still change a little bit. This is Sarasota, basically, maybe a direct hit there just south of Tampa. The farther south this system is from Tampa, the better for storm surge. But then near and south of these systems, that's where the worst of the storm surge is. And that would then mean more trouble for Fort Myers if it's farther to the south. So nobody wins, right, with this kind of a setup right now. From Tampa to Fort Myers, it will be bad. By Thursday evening, the system is a Category 1, and then it works off the east coast of Florida. Let's talk about some of the rain that we're expecting, along with hurricane-force winds. Very heavy rain. You get into the yellow and black coloring on this map. We are talking about over a foot of rainfall. And this will cause flash flooding. And places like Orlando, Daytona Beach, Tampa could all see some of this. Let's time the wind gusts. When do things really start going downhill? Today is the relative calm before the storm, honestly. Once we get into the afternoon, though, we start seeing these winds picking up 30 plus. Could even start to see some tropical storm force winds. Look at what happens once we go overnight tonight into Thursday morning. And look, these are just little samples. You could easily see more places looking at some higher wind gusts. This is just a general idea of the timing. It's going to be overnight tonight into Thursday morning when we see the worst of it. And then still, many of us gusting over tropical storm force, hurricane force, Thursday morning into Thursday afternoon as that system works across. I think the west coast of Florida finally gets out of those tropical storm force winds once we go overnight Thursday, and then by Friday morning, we're left with a north breeze. Storm surge, how much storm surge are we talking about? 10 to 15 feet. That is ocean water coming on shore. The worst of it will be overnight tonight into Thursday morning when we're getting those major hurricane force winds pushing that ocean water on shore. And then once we go Thursday morning into Thursday afternoon, those winds start to shift to the north. And then by overnight Thursday into Friday, Chelsea, they start pushing to the northeast. And that's when things should start improving rapidly around here. But I know we've got some impacts too.
And we're going to feel the impacts as early as this afternoon as our wind starts to pick up. And we'll be watching for isolated tornadoes today. We've already had a couple of those warnings, but I don't think the rain will be too much of an impact here in South Florida unless you're within some of the thunderstorms themselves. So the Florida Keys, 30 to 40 mile per hour winds sustained, gusts up to 60. And again, within some of these rotating thunderstorms, that could be even stronger. And then Broward, Miami-Dade, 20 to 25 to 35 miles per hour. So overall, expect those winds to be gusting at up to 50 miles per hour. And some spots could even be higher than that. The rain, like I mentioned, 1 to 3 inches, not too much rain. Some of us might even get missed by accumulation, but you'll get some of those just like trace amounts that come from the passing thunderstorms. We will be watching those thunderstorms, though. Risk of isolated tornadoes. That's our main threat today here in South Florida. They will be frequent, but they'll be quick, and they can still do some damage, especially to some infrastructures that have roofs that are like barn roofs and some of those lighter tree branches. So quick passing of these tornadoes can bring in some minor damage. That will be throughout our day today. That's a level 3 risk here across the area. For tomorrow, our risk goes down, but it's for those early morning thunderstorms, still the southern side of the outer bands of Milton. So tomorrow, not an all-day threat, just an early day threat. And while we'll have that threat here across the area, some of the more frequent and even stronger tornadoes could be further to the north, and some of those outer bands that are a little bit closer to the straight eastern side of the storm versus the southern side of the storm where we will be here. Our current winds will pick up. For now, notice that Fort Lauderdale has about a 12-mile-per-hour wind. Notice not a huge windy forecast just yet, but we will feel them. Key West already has a 29-mile-per-hour wind. These are our sustained winds. The gusts are even stronger than that, mainly down through the Keys. Key West has already seen a 39-mile-per-hour wind gust. Marathon 29 mile per hour. So when we're looking at future tracker with our sustained winds, not the strongest they could be, just the steady wind that we will feel all day today. Notice that it's still relatively calm through much of the first half of the day. We'll start to see those outer bands. This is where we're watching for tornadoes. That will last through our afternoon. We could have several warnings ongoing at the same time. Winds will pick up late day. So again, through the afternoon, notice our winds go 15 to 25 miles per hour, Broward, Miami-Dade, up to 35, 45 miles per hour down through the Keys. Gusting stronger than that. Overnight, we'll be watching for some of those tornado threats to linger, and into the day tomorrow, we will see that as well. So just notice round after round, and as this system's making landfall to our north, we will still have those outer bands and rainfall to get through. So again, not a ton of rain expected within that forecast today, but the bands will bring in some intensity to our area before winds weaken and lighten up. Notice, though, there is all of that steady rain that Adam was talking about starting to move into places like Tampa. For us, we're not seeing quite as much just yet, but it is working through. Notice another batch in the Everglades starting to approach our area that will slowly but surely work into far western parts of the area. I also want to point out, you can see how we get these little dots here, almost looks like, in those outer bands. That is where the potential for tornadic activity will be, and that is what we're going to be watching to start to move closer and closer to us throughout the morning and afternoon hours, guys.
All right, Chelsea, thank you for the update there. Take a look at this comparison on the left side of your screen. Roads are a whole lot clearer, though you begin to see some backup there, some taillights and brake lights. The roads, though, are a lot clearer compared to this time yesterday. The video on your right is where tens of thousands of people spent hours in traffic on Alligator Alley trying to escape the hurricane's path, evacuating and heeding those orders, which is good to see.
It is good to see. That time, though, is running out to protect some of Tampa's most vulnerable areas, like the major hospital there. NBC6's Julia Bagg joins us live in Tampa with details on what's happening to protect that hospital from potentially historic flooding.
Yeah, and Constance, really some heavy rain falling steadily here in this part of downtown Tampa, the Davis Islands area. And I want to give you another look at what is standing in between Tampa General Hospital and potentially historic flooding. It's the aqua fence that you see here. We've been talking about it this morning, but if you're just waking up with us, this is some ingenuity that is designed to keep flood water out. It's 9 feet high, right? So, but we're expecting a storm surge of up to 15 feet. So at that height, though, it is designed to keep back a storm surge of up to 15 feet. We're talking about the max that this aqua fence could handle. But guess what? It performed well less than 2 weeks ago. Take a look at how it did with Hurricane Helene. Again, not as much of a storm surge threat with that storm, but it did hold up. And what happens is when that water builds up on the outside of the structure, it actually helps keep the aqua fence in place. And the fence itself is resistant to high winds. It's resistant to projectiles as you can imagine, to avoid any punctures that would, of course, certainly allow water to get in on the other side of that. They're also not going to have any employees or patients on the first floor. So that's what they're doing. And what about residents? Because you know what? Here is Hurricane Milton knocking on their door so quickly after that glancing blow from Hurricane Helene. And we talked to a family in West Tampa, the Munoz family. We caught up with them as they were boarding up windows and taking out patio furniture. You know, they said that they weren't as well prepared for Hurricane Helene, but they're saying they know this is a bigger threat, and this time things are different.
This one is gonna be horrific. Let's hope everything is okay. We're just preparing for that.
And here's another look at that aqua fence outside the hospital. The way that it works, again, is water builds up on this part of the fence, and that's what keeps it steady. The hospital also has its own mini power plant to keep the lights on here, and it even has 2 wells to get its own water source. Also, hospital employees telling me that they've performed some improvements to the sewer system here to make sure that nothing backs up into the hospital. And so it just remains to be seen how well will this aqua fence actually hold up. Will it once again keep those potential flood waters at bay, but this time potentially much higher flood waters? Constance and Chris,
all right.
I'm live in downtown Tampa. We'll send it back to you.
Julia, thanks. And again, we wish them the best. That aqua fence held up well with Helene. Hopefully it does the same with this next round storm as the Hurricane Milton continues to get closer. Live look now. This is the Sunshine Skyway Bridge, the famous bridge there in St. Petersburg, where traffic is still moving across that bridge right now. It's calm. Closure, is expected later today once conditions begin to deteriorate. They're going to close down a lot of those bridges. And while many are looking to leave the Florida West Coast to find shelter, others are choosing to stay behind. Again, going against the advice of some of those experts in those evacuation zones. Tropicana Field in St. Pete has been transformed into a temporary shelter lined with rows and rows of cots for first responders to use. Only on 6 now, reporter Lena Salzbank's cousin, who lives in St. Petersburg, is planning to spend the nights there and stay there. He says he's prepared to ride out the storm with his friends.
As you can see there's the Tropicana Field entrance. That's the main entrance. They have a bunch of cots set up in there, and there's emergency vehicles, kind of populating the parking lot here. And then I can zoom here. You can see fuel and debris trucks there in the distance.
Everybody set up, staged across the area, ready to respond. He says that from what he can tell, it appears the state is prepared for what's to come, and he has stocked up on at least 2 weeks' worth of food and water.
All right. Well, people in Fort Myers also bracing for Milton's impact. Many people still recovering from Hurricane Ian 2 years ago. And of course, they tell us they're pretty worried.
Gives me PTSD. It's a little scary. We are primarily worried that it's just going to cause more damage out here.
We do know there are about 13 shelters opened up in Lee County. Stay with us. We'll be right back.